Holy shit, look at that artistic lighting. The fuck?
I don't know, man. I had not much going on. I literally got a couple shitty lights set up in the corner of my
Is that
dining
like a
room here.
real background or like a Zoom background?
No, I'm in the corner of my dining room right now.
It looks like a film noir movie set, like you're a detective in the 50s or something.
I'll take that, man. That's cool.
Dude, I don't think I'm doing well.
Are you sick?
I don't know, man. I'm out of it. I woke up at 4:45 this morning and I haven't stopped moving. I just finished recording a review like 25 minutes ago. Realized I forgot to even take a thumbnail photo, and I'm like, yeah.
What was the review for?
The worst tripod I've ever used in my life.
Nice.
Yeah, that's the title.
I like it.
Slick 734.
All right, on.
Yeah, just a gigantic piece of dog shit.
Not a comparison, just
Yeah,
Just-
I've been sorry. I'm trying to get everybody's levels here.
if I need to do anything on my end, just let me know.
I've been sitting on all these like little kind of mini one-offs that I don't really have a place to like fit them in part of a bigger context. And so I was like, just start cranking them out, man. Like it'll be 15 minutes long. I'll say what I liked, what I didn't like. I think sometimes I let my own complexity get in my way.
Right.
Like not everything has to be this big event or like super complicated thing. Like sometimes you can just bang out a review. And it was like, I said at the beginning, I'm like, this is more of a public service announcement than a review. Like I would feel bad knowing what I know if somebody bought this tripod after I became privy to this information if I didn't share it with people.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because most of your stuff's like an hour and a half long. It's very in depth, right? But I mean, there's nothing wrong with a 15-minute review either, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think I'm going to try and bang out next week. I'm actually going to do, Numa gave me these heated underlayers.
Okay.
And I don't have like a ton of experience with heated underlayers, but like these things worked phenomenally well. And sometimes I try and, I don't know, I talk myself out of doing reviews until I have some comparative experience. But again, am I going to run any other heated underlayers in the next 8 months? Probably not likely.
No.
Could some people find it valuable that I ran those heated underlayers at -20 for a week and I have some like valuable input that might guide their buying decisions? Probably. So bang out a little review, let people know what you think of the heated underlayers, and yeah, just move on.
Yeah, there's a guy at work the other day. He's wearing heated socks.
Yeah.
It started on fire, man.
Really?
Burnt his foot. Oh yeah, burnt his foot real bad. Like he had to get his boot off, get the sock off. I think it was like 3rd-degree burns or something. Plumber.
Holy.
Yeah.
So this brings up an interesting question. By the way, we're just keep all this in. I bought heated insoles for my whitetail hunt this year, and they were really expensive, like almost $300. And then I showed up to camp and people had like $40 ones, and I'm kind of like, I don't know, man. I like something's got to give. Do you know what I mean? Like this guy in Alberta made these $300 ones, and he's like a pretty ridiculous engineer. Like they're really well thought out. They've got really big batteries. And I was just like, when it comes to stuff like this, like especially stuff with batteries, like it trips me out, man. Like I don't want that stuff next to my skin.
No, I think if you're dealing with batteries or anything that could potentially burn you, you're gonna want to spend the money on the engineering. You just don't want anything from China, right? Basically, next to skin that could fail on you.
Dude, 100%.
Yeah.
That was another thing that I feel like I should bang out a review for. Like those, they're kind of complicated to make because you have to have your own insole and you kind of like got to cut them to fit and you got to cut a hole in the belt. Like it was like a bit of a process to make them, but they were amazing. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, especially when you're sitting trying to like, dude, most sits were like 11 hours a day.
Yeah, you were wearing those on your whitetail hunts?
On the Saskatchewan whitetail hunt, absolutely. And what I learned about all heated layers is that you need to pulse. Because you get, no matter how hot they are, you're going to get used to it in half an hour.
Right.
And then they don't really do too much. But if you just turn them on for 20 minutes, heat everything up, and then shut them off until you're cold again, you get 10 times the battery life out of them, and you stay. Because sometimes I would forget that they're on, and like 3 hours would go by, and I'm like, I just nuked the batteries, and like I did not need to have those on the whole time.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I was going to ask what the battery life on those things look like, but
it varies a little bit because there's different settings. That was the other thing I found. Like, there's no point putting stuff on high. Like, put it on low, turn it on. Like, you're just looking to suck the chill out of whatever it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
the heated underlayers from Numa, I gotta say, are phenomenal. Like, they're basically, like kind of heavy duty base layers. Like, they would be heavier than we would typically wear, and then they're like impregnated with, I don't even know what type of material, like something that's conductive, and they're body mapped. So it's like, it's not the whole shirt, but it's like across your chest and it goes down your back. And then they've got another little panel in the small of your back. Like, it's right where you would want it. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And they've got little buttons right here. And depending on how many times you press the button, it changes colors, and you know. And then they come with these 9-volt, like these big batteries, and you can get multiple ones and like swap them out. The other thing is you can actually have them plugged into a power bank while they're still attached to you. So you could just take like a 20,000 milliamp hour bank with you into the stand and run another cord down to that. And then you could have them on all day with no problems.
How big's the battery box, like where the lithium ion is basically? Is it cumbersome? Is it like getting in your way, like hip belt or anything like that? Or
no, it's really well placed. I'm trying to remember. I think it was down near the hem, and it's just like a stretchy pocket, and it's got a little cord, and you put it in there, and it's got like one of those, like the inverted pockets where you kind of like open them, and then when they close, the little flap kind of slips up and in. And then it was the same thing on the bottoms as well. And they're kind of about the size of a camera battery. If you can think about like one of those like Sony batteries, they're about that big, maybe a little bit bigger. And then the heated insoles,
like
yep, maybe a little thicker. And then the heated insoles, you wear these like calf straps, and then there's a little pouch in the calf strap that the battery sits in.
Or you could just stop being soft as baby shit and just wear regular base layers, right?
You could. I mean, I think there's only so much the human body can do when you're sitting perfectly still.
In
That's
Saskatchewan,
my thing. Well, in Saskatchewan wasn't even that cold. Alberta the year before was way colder.
Oh, was it? Yeah.
It was like minus 25, minus 30 Celsius. I wasn't making it whole day sits. I think the only real option you have, having done a couple of like deep winter whitetail sits now, is some type of body heater bag. Have you used one of these?
No.
Think of like a Carhartt sleeping bag, like giant Cordura camo exterior. Some of them have arms built into them. Some of them don't. Some of them just have one big unileg. Some have separate legs. But it's like a Maggie Simpson snowsuit for 300-pound dudes.
Okay.
And thing probably weighs 25 pounds. Like, they're ginormous. Yeah. And you can wear the bottom half and then just roll the top half, and it kind of goes around you with a belt. Or you can put your whole body inside. The problem is, once you get in there trying to get out of there to take a bow shot, once you're all wrapped up, that's why I wanted to go with more of the heated layers. And it's because, especially being like in an exposed stand, it would be different if you were in a blind, because then you've got some coverage and you can kind of like weasel your way out of it. But I think realistically, when it gets below minus 15-ish, if you're going to be on an exposed stand, you're either going to do some type of body heater bag or some type of heated base layer and insoles. Yeah.
Well, the heated base layer seems like it makes more sense. Because I feel
more
like,
adaptable.
If you're, sitting up there like the Michelin Man and you got to I feel like mobility for a bow shot
Yeah.
is probably not the best when you're
No,
puffed up like that.
I did find just wearing the bottom half in Alberta helped a lot. My buddy,
Yeah.
who was the guide who I went up there with, he'd ordered some and they just kind of came in for the last couple days of my hunt. And when I wore just the bottom half, it kind of solved the foot issue and kept my core warm. And then because I was using the Sitka Fanatic line, my upper body still stayed pretty warm. Like that was pretty doable, and that gave me a little bit of mobility. But even wearing that Fanatic stuff, like that's crazy hot stuff. And even that, you're not like, dude, as soon as you sit still for like an hour straight,
Yeah.
your body just has no ability to generate heat. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't have a lot of experience like sitting on hunting, but I do have a bunch of experience ice fishing. So sort of the same thing. You can
Very
only sit
similar.
for so
Look
long
at
on
the
ice.
crazy
Yeah.
the stuff people wear ice fishing. You know what I mean? Like you're done right
Oh,
up,
yeah.
and you're in some type of hut that normally has some type of heater in it.
Yeah, I don't do that. I'm
Are
too
you just sitting
mobile
like
to do
right on
that.
the ice?
I lay right down on the ice. A buddy of mine, I always made fun of him for it. He swears by it, but he brings like a really thin yoga mat. He'll lay that out in front of his hole, and then he brings like a heavy canvas blanket, and basically you just drill your hole. You lay on that mat, you throw that heavy canvas blanket right over top of your head, so it's dark, so you can see down the hole, and you're just hand jigging fishing basically for trout and brookies. Yeah. And it's actually quite warm. Like once you're on that mat and then you've got that blanket over top of you, it's not too bad.
I can see that.
Unless it's, -30 or -40 or something like that. But you're a lot more mobile than having to like move the tent so much. I have the tent for when I'm fishing with the kids, but that method, if I'm trying to be productive, is I can change, depths and locations pretty quickly using that method. So it's worked well for us for sure.
Do you use any type of visualization equipment?
My eyes.
That's it, eh? The
Yeah,
stuff
well,
people are using now, man, is crazy.
yeah, but I mean, with rainbows and with brookies, like where we live, generally speaking, I'm only fishing in like 6 to 12 feet of water, and as long as the clarity's good, you can see all the way down there. If you're in a hut or if you got that canvas blanket over top of your head, you can see all the way to the bottom. So once your eyes get used to being kind of in the dark, there's no visualization tool. But if I'm fishing for kokanee, I'll be using like a sounder to figure out what depth the kokanee at, because it'd be like anywhere from 40 to 200 feet in the lakes around here, right? So
I suppose I should take a minute because everybody's probably listening to this and wondering who I'm talking to. So for everyone on the podcast, this is my friend Leighton, who also goes under the name on Instagram, Glass Half Full Outdoors. Is there some underscores in there?
yeah, all underscores between.
It's like
yeah.
glass underscore half. Yeah, okay. Glass Half
Yeah.
Full Outdoors, which is more of like a, what would you call it? Like just a passion project?
Yeah, just outside of my main page, me and a buddy were talking one day about creating outdoors accounts, and we kind of had like a little side bet about who could get the most followers quickest. And he had his was Insight Outdoors, and then I just one day I was probably sitting on the toilet scrolling Instagram or something, came up with the idea of Glass Half Full Outdoors. And it's just a passion project. It's just to post my hunting and outdoors pictures for, I don't know, the 20 followers I have to.
And you got some hats and stuff. If I think it was one of the things I liked actually when we first started communicating online, because I think it does say something about your general outlook. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of glass half empty outdoors pages that,
Yeah.
like they don't call themselves that. But if you look at the type of content that they put out and the attitude with which they approach life, it's certainly more cynical than pessimistic.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the idea. Like part of it is a bit ironic, because there are times when I can be like, I'm usually a glass half full kind of guy, but I come across a little bit dry, and sometimes my dry sense of humor comes across as a bit negative. So it was partially that. It was also just obviously glassing with hunting. The idea was kind of just if your glass is half full of game, then you're probably having a pretty good day, right? So kind of had like a double or triple meaning, right? It's just
I never thought of that.
head.
That is cool. I like that second The double entendre there.
Yeah.
The other claim to fame you have is you are member 01 of Mindful Reviews.
Yeah, it popped up on my phone. Said
Yeah.
it said, the reviews platform's open. Here's the options. You could be a monthly, a yearly, or a lifetime. And I jumped on my computer at work and I signed up. And you hit me up like 5 minutes later, like, "Hey, dude, you're number one." I'm like, "Awesome, that's great,
Dude,
I'll wear that badge proudly for sure."
I didn't even know if anybody was going to buy. Like, I didn't know if anybody was going to sign up. And that first month, I think 90 people signed up. And I was just like, oh my God. And you were the first of what I would call like the surprise demographic to me, because I would argue you're just as good at testing and would be just as good at reviewing gear as I am if you had the time to actually create the videos. Like, you're one of the only people I know who could go toe to toe with me with the kind of variability of gear you got. And you're like, you buy a lot of stuff and you test a lot of stuff. And I didn't predict that there would be, and there is like a large group of people like that on Mindful Reviews that I would think don't need Mindful Reviews. And I almost think for you guys, it's kind of twofold. One, it's more about supporting the unbiased gear review movement than it is about needing access to Mindful Reviews, because to be honest, I don't even know how much I can really offer at the level the rest of you guys are at. And then I also think you got like there's a contributing factor. Like, you guys bring a lot to the forums that I was hoping more experienced people would come, and I wouldn't be the one who would be solely relied on to answer questions. But there's like a really big contingent there of people who are very experienced, buy a ton of gear, have very strong opinions about gear, but still wanted to be members. And that was a surprise to me when I first started.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll touch on it when we talk about the show, but that was something that I found that was consistent at the show, was the type of individuals that came up that wanted to talk to you. They were very similar to me. They're gear nerds. They love gear. They love testing gear. They may not have enough time to do it, but they latched onto your platform pretty quickly because of the unsponsored, non-biased, core values that you have, right? It's hard to find that, almost impossible to find that these days, right? So to me, it was a no-brainer once that kind of popped up. I was like, sure, yeah, I'm in, right? Like, if this community is going to grow to a point where there's enough people that are like-minded, like we are, that have the knowledge, that are willing to share that knowledge with each other, it's easy. That's easy money for me. It's $250, right? Like,
yeah.
That's nothing, right? Like, I'll pay that all day. I'll pay that every year if that's what it was, but once in a lifetime, easy money. So,
well, I appreciate the support. And I guess, yeah, that's why we're technically going to hop on. I want to do a bit of an interview, but maybe we'll get into that another time, because it's already 8:30 and we both got kids in bed and other stuff going on. So we'll talk about the show and see how much time we got. But basically, we wanted to do a breakdown of how the trade show went. So if you were at the trade show, if you saw anything to do with the trade show, Leighton played a really big role in the success that we had. I hit up, I think I might have, when they originally asked me to speak in October, I think you might even been one of the first dudes I texted, and I was like, should I do this? Like, part of me didn't feel appropriate speaking at a sheep conference because I've never killed a sheep. And then, I do like to have a couple people in my life just to check in with, to be like, it's good to have sounding boards. I think that's one of the things some people are missing, is like a reality check once in a while. And, I tend to be a confident guy, and everybody just tends to agree with everything you say. And you need people in your life who are willing to disagree with you. So I think I checked in with you even back then. And then once I decided I was going to do the booth, and you kind of hit on this early in our conversations, like, yeah, people were going to want to have conversations. So to be doing like booth stuff and trying to talk to people at the same time was like going to be impossible. So it's like, I knew I was going to need some kind of help. And you were like the first dude that I thought of. Plus, you'd been there before. I remember too, that was the other reason I touched base, because I remember us talking about the expo or kind of lack thereof that they'd had previously. So Leighton was instrumental in the whole thing even happening. Like every time I had an idea, I would run it past you. You had ideas. The backpack loading competition was your idea. So yeah, if anybody enjoyed anything that we did, you owe a note of appreciation to Leighton, because it wouldn't have, I mean, I'm sure it would have happened, but it certainly wouldn't have happened to the caliber that it did. I mean, I know how do you feel about everything now that we've kind of had some wind down? We'll get into the show as a whole, but as far as kind of how we represented and how the weekend goes, what's maybe like one or two things you think we did really well and one or two things you think we could have done better?
Yeah, I think my perspective of how the show went might be different than yours, right? Like I'm less attached to the brand, right? Like you find it financially, you're more, well, you're 100% responsible for what happened that weekend, right? And obviously that's your brand. I'm like Mindful Hunter. I'm an unsponsored, unbiased proprietor of your brand. So for me, it was an easy decision. I thought, when you reached out to me and said, "Hey, do you want to go to the show?" I've already been to shows in the past. I was probably going anyways, and the opportunity to work with you and meet some new people was a no-brainer. So I think what went well was, for me anyways, the engagement. Like it's been a couple of years since I've done something that social, and it forced you to really step out and have those conversations with people. And it was easy, right? Like it's hunting. Like we're all kind of in the same boat. We all share the same passion. So just having those conversations with people about your brand or just hunting in general was good. And I think a lot of people appreciated those conversations. Like a lot of times it ended up just being me having a conversation with somebody about whatever while they waited to talk to you, which I was more than happy to do. Right. So I think that went well. I think the backpack competition went pretty well. I think guys were pretty excited to get involved. Guys and gals were pretty excited to get involved in that. I think we were pretty jammed up. If you want to talk about things that didn't go so well, space was limited, especially with the amount of traffic we had. At times it was like, 6 or 7, guys and gals in our booth basically, and we only had a 10 by 20, right? So 10 by 10 was it?
Yeah.
10 by 10. Yeah. Right. So, I mean, again, if it's me, I'm like, let's get more space next year. Yes. But financially, that costs more money. So
I already put more our name down for a 10 by 20 next year. I emailed them a week ago.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think, I think for a first show, for your first time, based on my perspective, I think it went really, really well. There's things that we can improve on if we continue to do these types of things. But I was, pleasantly pleased with the way the weekend went.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I think having sat with it, most of my notes to myself for improvement have to do with messaging.
Right.
Like I think we did okay. Like I'll give myself a B+. Like if you think about all the things you're trying to communicate to people who could potentially literally glance at you as they walk by. Like you might get 5 seconds of somebody's attention. And I think that's what I underestimated. I thought there's going to be more time to absorb the messaging because everything that was important was written somewhere. I had these big, nice signs made up, talked about all the prizes, talked about Mindful Reviews. One sec. I realized in hindsight, I think I overloaded everybody because, dude, we were giving away so much stuff, which by the way, everybody, a lot of this stuff still needs to be given away. I have everybody's email addresses. I ended up with like hundreds, like multiple hundreds of email addresses that I still have to manually enter. So the backpack has been given away. A couple other things have been given away. but I really need to sit down this weekend and just type in like 200 email addresses and just start picking winners for stuff because I want to get it out of my house anyways. But I realized we had all this stuff to give away, and it took me like the first half of the first day to be like, why is nobody... Because even getting people to do the backpack loading competition was kind of challenging at first. Getting people to sign up for a newsletter to enter to win like thousands of dollars worth of stuff was like challenging. And I realized it's not computing. Like, it's, for whatever reason, it's not landing with these people that they have to do this like one pretty simple thing to win some stuff. And I think it's because I went too far overboard.
Yeah.
I think I had too many things to give away, and I think I gave them away for too many different things.
Yeah.
And they were kind of all communicated with the same sign. And I think when people looked at it, because the people who started getting it were the people who were coming back to see us. Like, you'd end up seeing the same people like 2 or 3 times because like it's not a big show. So they're just walking around. And by the third time they walk around, then it was like, oh, I get it. I can sign up to the newsletter and win this, and I can do the backpack and do that. And if I enter my, like, then they would get it. But what I got to do next year is get better at, I think, being more intentional with what's being given away and having it be more clear and being with less stuff, like have like 1 or 2 things going on for giveaways and be hyper clear that like win this by doing this and win this by doing this. And that was a big takeaway for me. And I think the other part about messaging is just the value proposition of Mindful Reviews. Mindful Reviews is a complicated thing. It's a simple concept, but it can be complicated to explain to people in like a 15-second elevator pitch.
Yeah, right.
Which is why most of my members come after I do big reviews, because you just heard me talk about something for an hour. You develop some level of trust for me. And at the end, I give you this pitch about Mindful Reviews and buying a raffle ticket. And you're like, oh, that seems like value. I will participate. Trying to explain to somebody in 30 seconds at a booth, this is what Mindful Reviews is a difficult thing to do because you're not really getting anything tangible. So that's another issue I want to solve for next year. And maybe it's not about pushing Mindful Reviews memberships next year, and it's more about just selling the merch and being there to talk to people. Because I think if you get people's email addresses and they're interested in buying some merch, you're creating that opportunity for dialogue later, and then they can get exposed to the ecosystem, and then 2, 4, 6 weeks down the road, they catch a couple reviews and then they're interested. Maybe that's a more realistic kind of consumer experience journey than somebody you've never met before, who's never seen any of your reviews, and they sign up for your review membership sight unseen because they meet you at a show. I thought more of that would happen. And at first I was disappointed. And then I just realized, and we did get some members. So it's not like I didn't sell any memberships. But everybody who signed up, I think already knew about Mindful Reviews. I don't think we had anybody who'd never heard of it and then signed up.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I do feel like that's a good takeaway from it. Is it seemed like we got caught in these moments where like at one point in time, we're just selling a bunch of merch. Yes. And then, 2 hours later, we're running, backpack contest after backpack contest after backpack contest. There was barely any, like, I think I signed up a few, 2 or 3 people to Mindful Reviews, like on the spot, which was pretty good, but it was time consuming for sure. Like it was, I had to open up my laptop, sit them down, show them what it's all about. And I think, like you said, they already kind of knew about it. It was just kind of the process of getting them on my computer to sign up. Right. So I agree. I think it should be more focused and more streamlined, a little bit simpler, because there was a lot going on for sure. In that 10 by 20 space, there was a ton going on, or 10 by 10 space, there was a ton going on.
Did you hear the Go Hunt guys talk about why they didn't do a booth this year at Western Hunt Expo?
Yeah, I listened to that podcast. Yeah.
I'm only just now recognizing, I think this is the same type of deal, because Trail specifically talked. He liked when they had a booth and they weren't crazy busy like a couple years ago before they really blew up, because it would take a long time to like sit someone down, and like that's a complicated buy.
Yeah.
What is filtering 2.0? What is points tracker? Like, what are we even trying to sell you here? Like, you need to walk somebody through researching a hunt and going on Insider and looking at the strategy articles and then tying it back to draw odds. And I think you need like 15, 20, 25 minutes with one person at a laptop. And if I was going to do, it's really cool you said that, because if I was going to do like a bigger version and I was going to try and do it on site, I think you'd need a few more people. And I think you'd need a couple stands, like with dedicated laptops. If you're interested in and I would have to have like, you would be signed in so somebody could come over. Cause that was the one miss. Like, there's so much valuable information on the forums in Mindful Reviews, and like nobody got to see any of that stuff. Like, I think you would literally need to take somebody. The other thing I thought would be having a live raffle, because that's the whole, like, that's the reason why most people join up in the first place, is to buy a raffle ticket, and timing a raffle for when the trade show was, so that if somebody was like, listen, you can buy a raffle ticket right now. Like, you can join for $5 a month and you can buy a $20 raffle ticket for a Hoyt RX 8. Then it's like, oh, I understand. Like, this whole concept now makes sense to me. So I think, if I was to do it again and have a focus on actually trying to sell memberships, which I might not even do, because I think the real value is about meeting people. Like, that's what I took away from this. Like, I don't really care if I sold 5 memberships or 10 memberships, or like, I now believe in my concept of Mindful Reviews. I know I'm going to be fine. If somebody's interested in it, they will find it. And if they see value in it, they will buy it. Where I thought was more value was actually taking the time to have, I'd almost rather sacrifice selling those memberships if it means I'm going to be more available to have more conversations and meet more people. Because I thought developing those relationships, and it's like, you don't want to feel like some cheesy YouTuber, but like, people watch your stuff and they feel a bit of a connection. And there was like really cool moments for people that they got to have a conversation and like ask a really specific gear question and get, personalized feedback. Like, I think that was my highlight of highlights, were all the old dudes, like dudes in their 60s who are retired, like hardcore Northern BC dudes who would just come up all gruff, be like, I like your shit. Keep doing what you're doing. Have integrity. And it's just like, I mean, I don't care how popular I get on Instagram. Like, there's more validation from like a grumpy old guy than 20,000 Instagram followers. I was like, I quit. I'm done. That I've scaled the mountaintop. Like, if you're getting that type of validation from those guys, like, because you don't even think, and those guys aren't going to go on Instagram and send you a DM. Like, I was surprised at the YouTube literacy of the retired guys. Like, how many dudes told me, I'm retired and I just watch hunting videos all day. I don't think those guys are on Instagram. I don't think those guys are messaging you. I don't know if they even care to join Mindful Reviews, and that doesn't bother me even if they don't. But I never knew how many of those dudes were heavily involved in YouTube. They get a ton of their content, and it was very flattering. Like, that was a big highlight for me.
Yeah, I was surprised with that demographic. Like, that demographic was constantly flowing through. Older gentlemen that were just stoked about what you're doing. Yeah. And I kind of thought it would be more like, guys like me. And I don't know, maybe that's just, selfish or whatever, but I thought it would be younger dudes, maybe new hunters or experienced sheep hunters that were looking for gear, tips and stuff like that. But yeah, the older dudes were a super surprising demographic to me, for sure.
Yeah, that was super cool. I'm trying to think of anything else. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, that was my interesting takeaway too, was for me, and it was a question I guess I have for you, is because I mean, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here when I say that, like, you're fairly openly introverted. Yeah. And to watch you move through that show the way that you did, I thought was pretty impressive. But I guess my question for you is, like, I know you kind of answered it just now, but like, how was that for you? Like, being a fairly introverted person who prefers solo hunting over hunting with other people, to make those connections. Like, I guess you just touched on it, but that's a pretty positive thing. That's a pretty powerful thing, right?
And the funny thing is, I think you can relate to this, and I think you actually made a comment already. And I'm going to answer your question by describing kind of my perspective of how I viewed your experience of the weekend. I think you're like me in that just walking into a room full of people and trying to go around and talk to a bunch of people you don't know is probably not something that's very interesting for you, or it creates a certain level of anxiety even.
Yeah.
But having this like role, like I'm here, I'm at this booth, I know what I'm supposed to do, changes everything. Like it gives you this level of comfort, because you got a home base. Like I can, and there's a safety in being like, I was a DJ for 10 years and there's something about the safety of the booth. You know what I mean? Like there's this barrier between me and you, and I know who I am on this side. And like being introverted isn't about being uncomfortable with people necessarily. It's about, for me, being uncomfortable with undefined roles. Like when I don't know what I'm supposed to do with myself, I get very uncomfortable. But when I know what I'm supposed to do, like if I'm supposed to go speak, if I'm supposed to give a presentation, like for my job, that's all I've ever done is be in front of people and do things and tell people what to do and manage groups of people. And I enjoy it. I like it. I'm good at it. And so I felt very comfortable, like more comfortable than I thought I was going to feel.
Yeah.
I was very anxious when they asked me to speak because I said, I haven't killed a sheep. And I do think you have to stay in your own lane. Like, I think it's very easy when somebody asks you to like show up as some type of expert to then think you're an expert at everything. And I was very clear with myself from like earlier on, like there are things I'm an expert at. There are things that I've done for 20 years in the mountains. I can talk about those things. There's things I'm not an expert at. Killing sheep is one of those things. I'm not going to talk about that. But you still think like you know those dreams where your teeth fall out and you go to school naked. Like you still have this, I'm going to get up on stage. I'm going to start talking about solo hunting and somebody's going to scream from the back, what right do you have to be like, of course that's never going to happen, but you do have these like insecure thoughts that like pop up from time to time. So it surprised me how comfortable I was. And I think part of that had to do with like a couple people I respect kind of gave me validation. Like when you see people who are hardcore and who have killed a bunch of sheep and they treat you like you deserve to be there, then I was like, I do deserve to be here. Now, obviously, we've had some conversations. Not everybody in the community feels like that. And I'm not even going to dive into that issue because I don't want to give that element of the community any energy. But I think I will just say that if you're going to put yourself in the spotlight and you want to do something with your time that's going to have you get in front of people, you have to realize not everybody is going to be supportive of you being there. And sometimes that's because some people have a scarcity-based mindset. And if you're getting the shine, it means they're not getting the shine. And some people just can't handle that. But overall, like, I mean, the vast majority, like 99.99% of my experience was positive. And I got to give a shout out to the Sheep Society. Like, it was run extraordinarily well for it being the first big expo that it was. And because if we're going to talk about my speaking, I even had concerns because they gave me the 10 to 11 spot on Saturday. It was the first spot. I was worried no one was going to be there because the doors only open up at 10, and it was rammed. Like I was like full house, man. Like they told me not to start till 10:20. And I walked over at 10:06 and like everybody's waiting for me to start talking. I was like, holy shit. And so I got to give the Wild Sheep Society of BC a really big note of appreciation as well for their organizational capabilities on this one.
Yeah, I mean, for the first year, I thought they did a bang up job. There's room for improvement, but I think, I mean, and we talked about it, and I sent a couple guys at the society a message saying, hey, let's offset those seminars because, you know, having a guy jump on stage at 10 o'clock when the doors open at 10 o'clock just isn't the best idea, right? And we've talked about that, but I've had those conversations with them as well, and I think you did too, right? They're going to consider that. But one thing I think that blew my mind sort of a behind the scenes look at the show was the elephant in the room was that Aaron Snyder didn't show up, right?
Yeah.
And they asked you at I think 9 a.m.
Yeah.
on Friday to fill in for Aaron. And I remember I was at the grocery store getting some food for the day. And you called me and you were like, "What do I do?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know, man. Like, I'm just working the booth, man. Like, if you,
Because
if
you
you're
want to
looking
talk about insecurity, like, okay, I'm not a sheep hunter. I'm sure as shit not Aaron Snyder either. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
guys, like you just made it even worse. Like for anybody that was going to say like Jay doesn't belong up there, it's like, I was like, oh my God, guys, like, can you, yeah, that was
yeah,
pretty
but
crazy.
so I just said, listen, like I'm not the one giving the speech. So like, if from my end of the deal, I'm happy to just stand at the booth for 1 hour and work the booth while you're up
Right.
there. Whether you are comfortable or capable of doing that is another thing. And then I think it was 12:30, booth was bumping, and you're like, man, I gotta fuck off for half an hour to my truck. I gotta put a presentation together. I'm like, you're doing it right now? You're like, yeah. I'm like, all right, man, good luck. And you left for literally like half an hour, 45 minutes, and you came back with your computer and you showed me, and you were like, yeah, I put something together. And I was like, okay, yeah, let's see how this goes. And I could hear you from the booth. And the feedback, like at 4 o'clock, when you started to wrap up and guys started to roll, like every time you talked at 4 o'clock or at 11 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, when you finished, the booth blew up. It got so busy. And that first day, when you came back, guys came in and they were talking about how good your presentation was. And I was just like, dude, he just put that together in half an hour in his truck in the parking lot, man. Like, the guy can talk about gear.
Yeah.
And I was super impressed with that. Like, that's sort of a little behind the scenes, but for you to be able to do that, and I guess that's, being a consultant and coming from your background, it's not as difficult as if it was, me being asked to do the same thing. But I thought you did, really well stepping into that, those big shoes to fill on Friday evening there. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man, because I was nervous. I wasn't nervous about Saturday, about talking about solo hunting, because I was ready for it. Like, I'd prepared for it. And then when they dumped the Snyder thing on me, I did get that pit in my stomach. And I was like, oh, I got sweaty palms. I'm nervous for, the multitude of reasons that we already discussed. But I did think, and part of me, and they even said, listen, if you want to give the same presentation twice, just do it. And like, I thought about that for half an hour, and I'm like, I can't do that. Like, that's just weak.
No.
And then I thought, go ahead.
It was good too, because, you might have been just heading that way with what you're saying. But I remember you said to me, Aaron was going to do, a gear review, a backpack fitting, right? So yeah. I'll just do what I know best, a gear chat, basically, like what to think about when you're thinking about buying gear or making gear decisions, right?
100%. And I think that's another big takeaway that I can share that helps me make decisions. And I know it's going to sound cheesy, but literally the question I ask myself in almost every single one of these situations is, how can I deliver the most value? Not how can I get the most applause, or how can everybody be the most impressed with what I'm doing, but like, how can I make sure that whoever's sitting there leaves with as much value as possible? And so when I thought about it, and I was like, well, Aaron was going to do a backpack fitting and talk about gear. And I'm like, dude, I do a podcast, now twice a week. Like, I can talk about gear in my sleep. I'm like, I just need a structure. I just need some bullet points to like go back to like have some type of organized flow to the conversation. And that was what I thought. I'm like, the way that I can benefit, and I don't even think I ever realized it, and this is one of my big projects coming up for Mindful Reviews. I've never cataloged the like net results of all my reviews. And I think we need a place on Mindful Reviews where there's like backpack takeaways, spotter takeaways, shelter takeaways. And it can literally be like a dozen bullet point, like the high level stuff, like these are the different types of frames. These are the different types of cost breakdowns. If your body is like this and you do hunts like this, you're probably going to fit stuff like this. Like, because there's these big overarching lessons I've learned through looking at, that was the other thing, by writing down all the gear that I've reviewed over the last 2 years, I was like, this is crazy. Like, there's so much gear here. And it's like, I don't even, like, maybe I am articulate and I am analytical and stuff, but I also think I'm just winning because I've just put my hands on more gear than anybody else. And so when I just decided, I think the way I can deliver the most value is just by doing a category breakdown of all the different product segments that I've looked at. And you can tell when a crowd is with you. And when I started, I was like, oh, okay, this is going well. And that kind of gave me a bump in the arm for the whole weekend. Cause I was like, okay, like what can happen now that could derail us? Like, we got asked to speak at the last minute. We stepped up, we crushed it. You held it down at the booth. We sold a decent amount of merch day one. And it was like a nuclear bomb could have gone off after that point, and I wouldn't have cared, because it was like, I don't see what else can possibly happen now that could derail this for us. Like, it was, yeah, man, it was and like, what an opportunity. Like, I don't want to be grateful at somebody else's misfortune, but like, for a guy who's trying to make a name for himself as a gear reviewer to get asked to fill in for Aaron Snyder last minute at a sheep show, I mean, it's kind of like winning a lottery ticket, to be honest with you. Like, yeah, I was a little nervous about it, but also this voice was like, dude, you got to step up. Like, these are the moments when you know, like the Eminem song starts playing in the back of your head. Like, stuff like that doesn't happen very often. And it's like, that's the time you can either like take advantage of it or you can blow it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Spaghetti. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's what I said. Like, listen, I'm not giving the speech, but I mean, I think it's good exposure.
Yeah.
Like, even if everybody didn't know Aaron Snyder was showing up, and they were like, "Oh, it's 3:00, Aaron's on," and they showed up and it's you. I mean, they're probably going to stick around, and that's, positive, right? Yeah. They might fuck off, but I don't know. Like, I said, listen, I think it's good exposure. I think it's a good opportunity. If you can put something together, do it, right? So,
well, and I think that was the other. I had so much in confidence in how you were at the booth too by then, because the beginning of the weekend, it's like, you're not quite sure how it's going to go. Like, are you going to be comfortable talking to people? Are you going to be comfortable like talking about mindful reviews? Like, I wouldn't ask other people to sell my concept, but like, just watching you interact with people and like the non-salesy way you had of, and I think because you have a same perspective on gear and like how you think about testing, like, it's not even a stretch for you to explain mindful reviews. Because to be honest, if I hadn't come up with the idea, it would, you could be doing it just as much as I could with the way that you look at gear and the amount of stuff you test.
Yeah, I mean, I got a couple of young kids, so timing's not the greatest thing, and I don't think that I have the drive that you have, if I'm being honest. But yeah, like, I think, you being in that position is pretty helpful. I'd rather you do it than me, honestly, right now. Yeah. But I agree. I think a lot of guys are in the same boat. Like, they love testing gear. They just, a lot of guys just don't have time, right? So,
and I don't think they want to be in the spotlight either, because that's what I talked about. Like, you are opening yourself up. Like, and we've had some conversations about some stuff that's happened lately, and I don't think there's not a lot of people that are interested in putting themselves through that. And I think no matter how conscientious you are and no matter how many people like you, like, it's gonna happen. Like, you're gonna have haters.
Yeah, and it's I let a lot, like, I'm pretty laid back. I don't let a lot of stuff get to me, and for the most part, I'll talk to anybody. I don't care. I talked to every single person at that show.
Yeah.
And I had a good conversation. Well, every person that was willing to talk to me at that show, and we had a good conversation, even though I knew in the back of my mind that, certain individuals, I may not, want to go for a beer with, but, right. We all share a common core value, which is, hunting and conservation and being outside and raising our kids right, or whatever it might be. Right. So, I was happy to just have those conversations with people and meet some new people. I gained some new acquaintances at this point, but that could end up becoming friends. And I think for me, that was, why I did it. And I was successful at the end of the weekend in doing that.
So what about the show as a whole? Like, it's enough about us in the booth and the speaking. What were some highlights of the show in general for you?
Um, it was different this year than it has been in the past. I mean, I've been a member of the Wild Sheep Society, I don't know, for 6 years now. I kind of got in right before, the big C. They didn't really do shows during that. And then they did one in Kamloops, which is my hometown. So I went to that, but it was pretty blocky. Like, all the seminars were in different rooms. Some of them were overlapping. The expo, to put it bluntly, sucked. And it was still good though. It was just, again, it was like more about the banquet than it was the expo. And it was just good conversations with good people. You got guys having a couple drinks, maybe you won a prize or something, right? But at the end of the day, you were putting money back into, wild sheep and wild places. So it was a win at the end of the weekend, right? This year was different. I think, my highlight was, working at the booth, meeting all those people. The banquet I thought was awesome. Again, like, I got the opportunity to meet some good people through you, sitting at their table and having good conversations. I got the opportunity, not a lot, to walk around and see some of the booths because we were so busy. But I think Saturday evening, the last hour, everybody kind of filed out to get ready for Saturday night's banquet, and it got pretty slow. And I took off, and I bought a knife off of Bruce Culberson, who's just a fantastic individual. I talked to the Spike Camp boys. I ended up buying one of their bear alarm systems, their pack alarm systems.
Yes.
Had a great conversation with them. I got to walk around and see everything that Precision Optics had going on, which was amazing. Like, they had kind of everybody dialed in down there. All the big dogs were down there. Frontiersmen had their booth set up which I think is like, if you continue to do what you're going to do and we're going to go to shows, or you're going to go to shows, they kind of had more of the casual sort of loungy vibe, which I think was really cool. Just stand-up tables and kind of a more open, inviting space, right? But, I didn't get to see everything that I wanted to see, but that's not a big deal. But I thought, for its first year, the highlights were the expo, because I think it's only going to get bigger. I think, and I guess we haven't touched on this yet. One of the big highlights was Shane from Weiser Precision showing up. Yeah.
I want to do more of that too. That was huge, man. So just a quick, so basically Shane, who is Weiser Precision, is a friend, and I'd hit him up and said, do you want to donate a head? And my pitch to him was, not enough people in Canada get to put their hands on gear. And I feel bad about this because we didn't really have a whole lot of room. And so his stuff wasn't sitting out, but it ended up working out better for him. He only lives just over the border in Washington. And he said, I think I'm going to be able to make it up for the show. And I'm like, well, let's book you a Q&A at the booth. And it went over huge, man. Like, he had dudes there. I think he even stayed longer than he planned on staying. It was awesome, man. And his stuff is so interesting, and he's such an innovator in a sea of like Alibaba knockoff gear companies. It's just refreshing to see. And then for those guys, half of them have never even seen his stuff before. They were just walking by, saw some crazy looking tripod panhead sitting on the thing, and stopped and just started talking to him. And he knows his shit so inside and out. That was super cool to be able to, because it's like companies like that I want to support. I'm not going to get biased, and I'm not going to tell you his gear's better just because I like him and he's a good guy. But in the same breath, if there's a smaller company, and by giving their stuff a review, and they do make like really good, really innovative stuff, if I can do anything to like help them succeed, I feel grateful for the opportunity. So that was super cool having him at the booth.
Yeah, that was definitely a highlight for sure. There was a lot of guys that were were pretty interested in what he had to provide in terms of Q&A and then the products that he brought up. He didn't have any for sale, but he had a discount code for the sheep show, a discount for the products that he's selling. And I think that's where, that's why I think the sheep show the expo is going to get bigger, right? Like is if guys like you and Omar can bring in guys like them and show those guys, that are maybe, in the lower 48, that there is value to bring your product up to British Columbia and promote it, because, we kind of live in the epicenter of mountain hunting.
Yes.
I think that's going to be a good thing going forward. And I think, guys like Weiser or maybe Argali or Easyac or whoever, right? Like, guys, if the Wild Sheep Society is willing to work with you, somebody that's built these relationships with these individuals to, or Omar or whoever, to bring these guys up, I think it's just going to get bigger and it's just going to get better.
I think you nailed it, man. And that was what I said to them at the end of the weekend. I'm like, please let me know next year when you start doing the booking. And they're like, well, we told those guys this year. And I'm like, yeah, but you need somebody who's been here, who knows their market, to tell them who's going to be here at the show. Because in their mind, it's just this show in the middle of nowhere in Canada, and they don't know who's actually going to be walking around. And like, I know who buys Argali. I know who buys Weiser. Like, I know, and like every single person in that room is those people. Like, yeah. And they're never going to, like 90% of those dudes are never going to have a chance to put their hands on that gear unless they buy it and have it shipped up, and it's going to cost a fortune. And so I would love to try and help them get some of those like smaller, more niche brands. And I was even thinking like they could like, they don't even have to like all come up as big independent. Like they could double up on a couple booths, or even if we had a bigger booth, we could host more Q&As. And have some of their, like, now that we've got our shop kind of sorted out, maybe we could host some, because that's what Omer was doing. Like a lot of that stuff it was just being sold through Precision. And I thought to myself, well, maybe that's another way we could add value, is we could have host some of those smaller brands if it's not realistic for them to come all the way up and have a whole booth. But that would be if I was going to contribute anything moving forward. I also thought to myself, I want to try and do something bigger next year for contribution. Like, gear is such a big part of sheep hunting, and I didn't see it like showcased. Like, I was like, maybe next year I got to put together like a Mine for Reviews raffle package that's like crazy. Oh, yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like an ultralight sleep system paired with, and all from different people. So it's not like one company, but literally Mine for Reviews will go out and buy like $2,500 worth of gear, like the best of the best, sleeping pad, ultralight shelter, tripod hit, and put together like a big Mindful Reviews package that could get raffled off during the banquet or something like that. Because I saw brands pushing brands, but I didn't ever see I didn't see the focus on gear that I thought there was going to be. They have like that Mountain Tough thing in the morning. I was like, well, what about like a gear round table or something that Mine for Reviews, they do the whiskey tasting. Maybe Mine for Reviews could like host a gear talk or something that would take place between that 5 and 7 dead zone, and I could sponsor it, and we could take a room and I could pay for the drinks, and we could have like 30 or 40 dudes come in and just host a gear conversation and have a bunch of gear that people could play with. But that's one of the things I've been trying to like think about. How could I contribute a little bit more next year and that was another, having that problem about trying to pitch Mine for Reviews in 15 seconds. I was like, well, maybe if I had something more meaningful, it would be a better opportunity to have more like sit down conversations with people. And again, I keep coming back to deliver value. Like if you just deliver value to people, people will want to contribute value to you. I mean, that's why you joined. You watch enough reviews. You're like, I've gotten a lot from what this guy has done. I feel almost compelled now to want to, like that reciprocity I want to give back. If I could host some type of something like that, I think that would be a more altruistic way of kind of like building those relationships.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic idea. And like you said, like Omar was like I went to the Stone Glacier booth because I'm a big I like Stone Glacier. So I talked to the guy there. He was from Idaho, but he brought no stock up. Like his,
It was all
I think
owners.
that's the problem. Yeah, that's the problem with
tough.
coming over the borders, bringing product up and selling it is. I think there's duty issues and blah 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 blah. Right, but
Yeah.
that was all Omer's stock. But again, like if we could, do something like that and host these smaller companies and have them, in one central location for guys. And then again, like what you just said, I think that's a great idea. Like the gear symposium, if you will, like
Yeah.
some sort of isolated gear conversation, not unlike, it's a little bit different, but like you just had Gritty on, and Gritty's doing a bear hunting mountain seminar, if you will.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a little bit different, but I just watched his podcast today, and they're just literally, they've got 200 guys, and they're talking about gear.
Yeah.
They're breaking down gear, and they're showing guys like what they use and why they use and how they use it. Right. You could do the condensed version of that at the Sheep Show. I think there's a lot of value there.
Yeah, and almost like more of a mixer than a seminar, because I'm already giving a talk. I don't want to talk at people anymore. I'd like to, guys like yourself and maybe get some other Mindful Reviews members. Like if I could get 10 of the kind of more higher, more experienced Mindful Reviews member, and then like start facilitating like a big conversation and have it hosted with some like free drinks and, the sausage I brought. Who knew that was going to be so popular? I couldn't believe nobody else was giving out free food. It was crazy. And I couldn't believe anybody else wasn't giving out free food. Like, why wouldn't you? And so maybe hosting something like that. And then, yeah. Anyways, I don't want to go on all night. It's getting late and we both got to get up in the morning. But I would like to say to anybody listening, if there's stuff that you saw that you liked that we did and you want to see more of it, please let me know. If listening to this conversation is like sparked an idea and you're like, oh, that would be super cool. Like maybe if Jay did something like this, like I'm open to it. I've already applied for Portland next year. They've called me and said it's a go. They're going to call back in April or May to do the actual paperwork. So Leighton's getting roped into that, and he'll be driving down to Portland with me. Yeah. And if we can get into, I think Western Hunt Expo is going to be the same weekend, and I think there's a multi-year wait. So I think most likely it'll just be Portland next year. But this was a huge learning for me, that meeting people is, Gary Vaynerchuk talks about like areas of marketing or areas of opportunity that are undervalued. And I think what's undervalued right now is opportunities where you get to meet a bunch of people face to face. I think everyone is so focused on the online thing. And that's what I took away from going to Western Hunt Expo. I know all those dudes on Instagram. I talk to them all the time, and I tell myself we have a relationship, and I talk myself out of going to meet people because I'm like, well, we talk on Instagram. Why do we need to meet? After going all, it's not the same. It's not the same. Like you take something away from those personal like you leave filled up. It's like, it's good for your soul. Like spending time face to face with other people who care about the same things you do does something to you that's intangible. And it was like, I think after, COVID and all the rest of it, like I think we, and with how big social media has got, we've just talked ourselves out of these types of interactions. And after doing those two shows back to back, I was like, this is going to be a huge part. Like I'm already thinking with Forged in the Backcountry, I'm like, where else can we go? Can I get a booth at like a TAC, the Total Archery Challenge, and just go set up like a tent and sell merch for the weekend? And it's like, I kind of care about selling merch. I also kind of don't. I just want to hang out for the weekend and meet people. Or like there was a BHA pint night. And listen, I'm going to be honest, BHA is not my favorite. There's some funding issues that are a little sketchy, but it's one of those things where maybe Forged or Mindful could sponsor something and I could go show up and meet people for a few hours. Like I'm really starting to try and think about more opportunities to meet people face to face, because I think it's vastly undervalued, and we're losing out as people because of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was my takeaway. That was like, we talked about it already, but like, there's a couple of guys that I already follow on Instagram that I'd never met before that I appreciated, like based on the content that they were putting out that I was consuming on Instagram. I actually got to meet them face to face, like Brandon Roth and Anthony Kluby, like those guys,
dudes.
right? Salt of the earth, right? Like, never met them before. And for all I knew, they could have been, this way or that way, right? I don't know, but just, if I just stuck to, online, content and consume that, anybody can be anybody online, and they could lead you in one direction, and all of a sudden one day they could send you a DM that's absolutely completely offside and out of character from what you would expect, right? And you'd be like, holy shit, this guy's just an asshole. But that face-to-face interaction was super surprising and super rewarding. Like, meeting good people at the show was guys that now, like, when I talk to them, I understand who I'm talking to, and I can make those connections, and we can, maybe even go on hunts or bounce ideas off each other. We live in different areas in the province, but we share common interests. So I think going forward, if we do more of these shows and stuff, that's going to be my value proposition. Help you, grow your business is number one. But going forward for me, it's going to be just personal connection for sure.
Yeah, that's badass. So Leighton will be back. I want to do a bit of a gear chat with you, separate from actual, like, any hunting plans, but we're also going to Idaho together this year. I won't go into too many of the details, but we both have a mule deer tag in Idaho in the same unit, which, yes, happened on purpose. And so later on in the year, when that starts getting closer, we'll get back on and do a little bit of people love gear prep episodes. And sometimes I feel like, I'm just telling you, I'm taking the same stuff again and again and again, but I don't know, man, people love it. So it's like, okay, I'll keep doing gear dumps. It was funny that Brian Call brought that up on the episode that I did with him, because he does these gear dumps and he's like, everybody keeps sending me links to your gear dumps saying your gear dumps are better than my gear dumps. He's like, finally I had to go look at them, and I was like, well, they are pretty good. And so I was I thought that was pretty funny, man. But yeah. We'll definitely.
I'm happy to come on and talk about gear. I could do that all day, basically. So,
yeah, well, we're both looking at some purchases this year. I'm going across the border tomorrow, so I got to go pick up my Abrasaka from Argali and the new Sawtooth, the knife. And then you're looking at that 6P, and you've got a couple of other interesting purchases. And I thought I was being all, super progressive, getting my 50-degree Fahrenheit synthetic Enigma quilt. And then you already have one. I was so kind of choked about that, because I thought, I've come up with this fantastic idea. And it's like, no, you're just totally doing what Leighton has already done before you.
Yeah, that's just coincidence. I think great minds think alike, right? So,
well, and this is why I like to have gear conversations, because like this is one of the things where it's like, I think people are vastly over-geared on their sleep systems. I think when you start realizing what you have with you in clothes, there are pounds you can shave off your sleep system without sacrificing comfort or sleep quality, just by being smarter about how you organize your gear. And a little hint, my plan for the year is that basically, for everybody listening, I got a 50-degree Fahrenheit quilt that will be my only bag. The thing it's synthetic. It weighs like a pound. But because I always sleep in my clothes, and I always have my puffy gear, because in BC, when you go up in the mountains, you just never know how cold it's going to be. So I don't care if it's August 1st, you're taking your puffy jacket with you. I was like, there's no need for me to have anything more. And I've always tried to get away with it down, but I'm like, if I just go 50 degrees, I've got the drying properties and the safety of synthetic. The thing weighs next to nothing. And as long as I've got my extra layers, I sleep hot as it is. Also, it's going to serve as the shell for my layered down synthetic system for deep winter goat hunting. So anyways, that's that's part of the conversations I'd like to get into later on a future episode, is just like more of a systems based approach to gear. Cause I find everybody's looking for like, what should I get for this piece? And what should I get for this piece? And it's more about like, well, I don't know, because this stuff's supposed to operate as a system. And once you kind of decide what the system is, the pieces kind of decide themselves. But that also kind of locks you into a system, because then when you go to build another system, you kind of need a bunch of other pieces to kind of put that together. But
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
All right,
that'd be
man.
a great conversation. I'm happy to have it. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you again, dude. Like, sincerely, man. This was the other thing. We both kind of had a chuckle afterwards, because the first thing Leighton's wife said when he got home was, "So do you want to kill him?" And one of my hesitations with hunting with people is that so far the vast majority of people have broke. And I'm not saying I'm some crazy rock star, but it's just like, go watch my films. You will watch person after person not finish hunts. And they don't look like that crazy. So I just get super nervous about like, oh my God, man, what am I committing to? It's a little bit different because I've seen what you're capable of through your own content, but you still don't know what it's going to be like spending 7 to 10 days really isolated with somebody else. But I texted you. I'm like, dude, if we can do that booth for 2 straight days, there's nothing. What's a couple days in the mountains? Like, that was full on. And we never lost tempers. We never got heat. I think our personalities played. I tend to be a little bit more intense. You tend to be a little bit more laid back. And so there just wasn't really that opportunity for friction, because it wasn't like 2 intense people or 2 laid back people.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's what I said to her. She said, and it was honestly just a test run, it's not a very accurate test run, but a test run for what Idaho might be. And I said, it's going to be no problem.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing that might be an issue is my physical condition, and I'm going to make sure I take care of that. But other than that, in terms of personalities, we're going to be fine. So
yeah.
All
right, brother. I appreciate the time. I'll let you go. To everybody else, a couple little bits of housekeeping. Obviously, we talked the shit out of Mindful Reviews. If you want to join, mindful-reviews.com. And I want to remind everybody, I think there's like 42 days left between now and April 16th. Every $5 you spend on Forged in the Backcountry apparel gets you 1 entry to win a guided black bear hunt in British Columbia. I'm coming on the hunt. I will film the hunt. It will go up on the Mindful Hunter YouTube channel. So forgedinthebackcountry.com. You want some kick-ass apparel. And there might be some new little treats dropping soon on the website, probably in the next couple weeks. So
I got to throw something in right at the end here.
Yeah, please.
Real quick, just if you are not already a member of the Wild Sheep Society of British Columbia, it's something that I think you should strongly consider. I've been a member now, I think it's 6 years or something. I'm a Monarch Silver member, and I just actually signed my kids up for half curl memberships 2 days ago. So my 3-year-old and my 6-year-old are now members of the Wild Sheep Society. And I think if you want to put your money where your mouth is, like, there's no better organization in British Columbia than the Wild Sheep Society. It's if you know anything about anything in British Columbia, the government isn't going to do us much favors. So we need to look at some of these organizations like the RGMA and the Wild Sheep Society for funding. And they've got a lot of good programs when you sign up for either, monthly or yearly or lifetime or Monarch memberships. Your money goes directly into, wild sheep and wild places, not just wild sheep, like all animals on the landscape basically can benefit from what they're doing. So I think it's a good opportunity. Take a look at the website. I deal with Michael Serby there, and he's very easy to talk to. So if you ever have any questions, maybe give those guys a call and touch base with them, and they'll explain it to you, because there's a lot of opportunity there for us to do, good. And instead of wasting our breath, fighting with each other online about, who's killed what and who's done this and who's done that, let's put our efforts into something that matters. That's going to, hopefully allow my 3-year-old and my 5-year-old to hunt sheep when they're old enough to do so. So that's my rant, but I appreciate your time, Jay.
thank you for remembering to bring that up. And I had rolling memberships, like I think the 3-year ones at RGMA and or RMGA and Wild Sheep Society. And to be honest, I think one, if not both of them, kind of reached the end, and I didn't remember to renew. And one of my big takeaways from the weekend, and I screwed up, man, because they had a killer deal on lifetime memberships for Rocky Mountain Goat Alliance, is where you got like a Benchmade knife, and it's like a $200-$300 knife, and I was like, what? And it's normally $800 US, and they were selling it for $800 Canadian. But one of the big takeaways for me is I need to log into both of those and do lifetime memberships at both, because there's just no excuse. Like, and then I don't have to worry about remembering to renew because it's just taken care of.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, brother. Thanks for your time. Have a good night. Everybody else, thank you for tuning in. And we'll talk to you soon. All right. Cheers, brother.
Thanks, man.